Hello all the year 13 chemistry students. I hope you are all doing fine. Welcome back to the fourth part of our strand 4.1. Now in today's topic we are going to discuss about something very important, that is transition metals. So when we are talking about transition metals, one thing very interesting that we have encountered throughout our journey in chemistry was some of the very unique and funny names that we encountered, such as the formula of iron is Fe, yet we pronounce the name as iron. The formula of copper is Cu, yet we pronounce the name as copper. And why is symbol of silver Ag not Si? Well, to answer these questions, we need to look at their history. Transition metals, most of them that is, have derived their name from the alchemist. That means from the Latin names. Some of the four regular transition metals that we normally use in our study are iron, which formerly was referred to as ferrum, copper, which was referred to as cuprum, silver as argentum, and gold was known as aurum. So with these Latin names, their symbols were represented accordingly. So students, let's dive into transition metals and try to understand what a transition metal is and try to look at some of their properties. Right students, so let's try to define what a transition metal is. There are many ways in which a transition metal can be described. However, there will be only one accepted definition of a transition metal. A transition metal is any element that forms at least one ion in the D block of the periodic table. The important part here is that it forms at least one ion in the D block of the periodic table. So when we look at a transition metal in the periodic table, this is what we look at. Any element that falls in the range in scandium and zinc. So all these elements that are covered in the yellow region here, they are the transition metals of the periodic table. Okay. Now these transition metals, they have a d orbital in their configuration, and because of this d orbital, they have a lot of different properties compared to normal metals such as group 1, group 2, aluminium and all the other metals that are at the bottom. Compared to their properties, transition metals will have some of the very unique properties, and we are going to be looking at what these unique properties are. Okay, so the first property of a transition metal is that they have variable oxidation state. Now the reason why they have variable oxidation state is to do with their 4s and the 3d orbital. Transition metals can lose electrons first from the 4s orbital because 4s is higher in energy after being filled, and then the remaining electrons will come from the 3d orbital. Remember the three rules that we have learned when filling electrons of Bohr principle, Hund's rule and Pauli's exclusion principle. Okay, so electrons are removed from the higher energy level first, which is why 4s is losing electrons first. Now the question arises, why do transition metals have variable oxidation state? That means why can they end up losing more than one electron while normal metals will have only one oxidation state? I'll give you an example. Calcium. Calcium is a normal group 2 element, and calcium is going to lose how many electrons, class? It's going to lose 2 electrons. So after calcium loses 2 electrons, it will become Ca plus 2. Therefore, calcium can have only one oxidation state, which is Ca plus 2. But if we look at Fe, Fe can have many oxidation states, out of which the two common ones are Fe2 plus and Fe3 plus. So the question again comes here. Why do these transition metals have variable oxidation state, many, while normal metals have only one? So to understand this, let's look at their configuration. Now if you're looking at this configuration, you can see that, let's say for 2 electrons in the 4s orbital, so scandium can lose 1 electron. Okay, the charge will be +1. It can lose 2 electrons, so the charge will become +2. And it can lose a 3rd electron from the 3d orbital having a charge of +3 maximum. Okay, moving on to titanium. Titanium can lose a maximum of 4 electrons. Okay, let's look at this table here. This table basically describes how the oxidation state of different transition metals are worked out. So if I take you back to scandium, you can see that only +3 is written there. Well, this +3 simply means that is a very common oxidation state for scandium. However, scandium does have the ability to lose 1 electron from the 4s, as it can also lose 2 electrons from the 4s too. Okay, so the oxidation state of scandium can be +1 or it can be +2 up till +3. Then we look at titanium. Titanium can lose 1 electron from the 4s to become +1. It can lose 2 electrons from 4s to form a +2 oxidation state. It can lose 3 electrons, 2 from the 4s and 1 from the 3d. So a total of 4 electron can be lost from the titanium atom. That is why the configuration, the oxidation state of titanium ranges all the way from +1 all the way down to +4. Okay, if we look at vanadium, vanadium has 3d3 and 4s2. So altogether, vanadium can lose 5 electrons. Okay, a total of 5 electrons, 2 coming from 4s and 3 coming from 3d. And you can see in the table up there. So vanadium up till 5 oxidation states are possible. It can't lose a 6th electron because that 6th electron is going to come from a 3p6. And a 3p6 is fully filled and very stable orbital, which will require a lot of energy. Okay. Then we go down to chromium. You can see the order of filling of chromium. Chromium is 3d5 4s1 instead of 3d4 4s2. And the reason is this. Okay, 4s1 3d5 is more stable because 3d5 is half filled compared to 3d4, which is partially filled. And atoms always want to go towards whatever is more stable. Okay, so altogether chromium can lose 1 electron from the 4s and the remaining 5 can come from 3d. So a total of 6 electron can be lost by chromium. Similarly, when we look at manganese, which is the 25th element in the periodic table, a total of 7 electrons can be lost by manganese, 2 from 4s and 5 from 3d. However, when we go down to iron, iron is having 2 electrons in the 4s and 6 electrons in the 3d, but it will not lose a maximum of 8 electrons. Now the reason for this is the stability of the orbital. So let's look at the configuration of, I'm looking at the configuration of Fe, 3d, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 3d shell of Fe is having 6 electrons. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and the 6th one is here. So what kind of orbital do you think is represented by this 3d orbital? So if it is partially filled, it will be less stable. Therefore, 3d is going to lose this electron here. Okay, the 6th electron. This is the one that is going to be lost. After this is lost, we are left with 5 electrons. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So after losing that electron, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what kind of orbital do we have now? Now we can see that it is half filled and more stable. And you know the stability of orbitals. Okay, it says that if orbitals are stable or very stable, then it will become very hard for them to lose an electron, which is why in Fe 3d is only going to lose 1 electron. not more than one. Because after losing one electron, the 3D will become half filled and more stable. So losing the other electrons will not be possible, as it will require a lot of energy. Therefore, Fe, if you look at it, it can lose a maximum of, okay, the common ones. I'm going to look at the common ones. 2 from the 4s and 1 from the 3D to make a total of 3. So the very common oxidation state for Fe will be +2 and +3. Okay. Now we go down to cobalt. In a similar way, when we look at cobalt, we will predict how many electrons cobalt can lose. Okay. Then we go down to cobalt, iron, nickel, copper, and then finally when we come down to zinc, you can see that the 3D is fully filled. It is 3D 10, 4s 2. So how many electrons can zinc lose? Zinc will end up losing 2 electrons only. Okay, and that 2 electrons in zinc is going to come from the 4s orbital. Because losing a third electron from zinc would mean breaking the stability of the 3D orbital, and that would require a lot of energy. Alright, so students, there we have it. Okay, why transition metals have variable oxidation states. Now, which of the transition metals have the maximum number of oxidation states? Which one do you think? That's right, it is manganese. Manganese have the maximum number of oxidation state. The next property of a transition metal is the ability to form colored ions. You will see that most of the transition metals that we encounter either in our real lives or in the lab, they all have different colors. Like for instance, we have vanadium. There are several salts of vanadium which will have their different colors based on their individual oxidation state. Chromium, for instance, something which we have been learning from year 12. Chromium can exist as a dichromate ion, which is orange in color. And then after the dichromate ion is reduced itself, it becomes chromic ion, which is green in color. Okay, so the different oxidation state will decide on the different color of the transition metal. Now, why do transition metals have different colors compared to the normal metals, which are usually white in appearance? The reason is the d orbitals. Now, transition metals have an incomplete d orbital which absorb light of a particular wavelength, and then the colors are those that are not absorbed by the wavelength. Okay, one example for that would be this. If we look at a particular color being absorbed, let's say if the green light is absorbed. If the green light is absorbed by the d orbital, we will not see the green color. We will see a different color. Like for example, we may see a purple color. Okay, so whatever color is absorbed by the d orbitals, that color is not seen, but a different wavelength is seen. Okay, and all of that is due to the d orbital electrons. In most of the cases, the transition metals are bound by a ligand. A ligand is anything that has a lone pair of electrons, or it is a negative ion. So one such example of this is hydrated salt, like copper sulfate, which is hydrated means it combined with water. So in a hydrated copper sulfate, the appearance of this is going to be blue due to the presence of water in it. But when we heat this copper sulfate up, the water will evaporate. Therefore, the appearance of this copper sulfate will change into white, which means that the water is the chemical which will decide the color of the transition salt. Okay. So it is very important, students, that we understand the fact that transition metal salts are colored due to the d orbital electrons which are absorbing the light and re-emitting the light of a different wavelength. On the same note, we also have to make a note of these two transition metals, scandium ion and zinc ion. These ions, they don't have colored ions. Rather, they are having colorless solution. And why is that? Because none of these ions, Se, scandium 3+ and zinc 2+, none of them have a partially filled D sublevel. They have a fully filled D level, which is why the color absorption cannot be affected, okay, by the D orbital. So any ion whose D orbital is fully filled, they are going to be colorless. But for those metals which have, for those metal ions which have an incomplete D orbitals, their salt is going to be colored, okay. Now we look at the third important property of a transition metal, which is paramagnetism. Paramagnetism usually refers to the ability of a metal to be affected by a magnetic field, and this is caused by the unpaired d orbitals. So very important point to note is the unpaired d orbital. Let's look at an example. Fe, which is iron. Okay, let's look at their d orbital. D orbital is partially filled. Okay, 3d6 is partially filled. If we write this in a diagrammatic format, it will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you fill the electrons, it will be according to this principle where electrons are unpaired, and then we come back and pair them up. So this makes the 3d orbital of Fe partially filled and less stable. So you can see 1, 2, 3 and 4. There are 4 electrons which are unpaired, and any orbital which has unpaired electrons will be affected by magnetic field, which is why if you bring Fe closer to a magnet, it will attract it due to the unpaired d orbitals. But when we look at metals such as copper, these metals are not attracted to the magnet because they are diamagnetic. A diamagnetic metal is anything which is not affected by a magnetic field, and such examples are that of copper. So if you look at copper and look at its configuration, you can see that d orbital is fully filled. If it is fully filled, none of these electrons are unpaired, which is why they will not be attracted by a magnet. Okay, so in short and simple, paramagnetism, materials which are attracted by a strong magnet. Diamagnetic are those substances which are not affected by a magnetic field. Sometimes transition metals act as a very good catalyst. A catalyst is any chemical which will speed up a chemical reaction by lowering the activation energy. Why do transition metals act as catalysts? It is because the d orbitals are able to absorb gases, and when this happens, then the reaction can be speed up. Okay. Some examples of places where transition metals are used as catalysts are: number 1, vanadium is a metal which is used as vanadium pentoxide in the contact process, which is the production of sulfuric acid. So in the production of sulfuric acid, vanadium is used as vanadium pentoxide, that is a catalyst. We have iron that is used in the form of iron or iron oxide, okay, in a Haber process, which is a production of ammonia. So you have to know the names of these transition metals and which reaction they catalyze. That is very important, students. Then we can look at manganese, which exists as manganese dioxide, and it is used for catalyzing a decomposition of hydrogen peroxide reaction. Okay, so there we have it. These are some of the examples of where a transition metal can be used in. Next, we look at titanium, which exists as titanium chloride, and titanium chloride will catalyze the polythene manufacture reaction. Okay, polythene is a polymer which is usually found in plastic bags. So the manufacture of these involves the use of titanium. Then we look at nickel metal, again a transition metal which is used in the production of alkenes. So the alkenes are reacted with hydrogen to produce alkane, which is margarine, a long chain saturated hydrocarbon. Okay. And finally, we look at copper that can exist as copper oxide or cupric oxide that is used to catalyze a mobile process. Mobile process is a process that is responsible for the production of petrol. Okay. So now students, we have looked at the chemistry of transition metals and studied some of their properties. So if you recall, what have you learned? Number one, the definition of a transition metal, okay, where the element must form at least one ion in the d orbital. And then we looked at some of the properties of a transition metal, and we have seen that most of these properties are due to the incomplete d orbitals. So if the d orbital is incomplete, then it will give a range of properties to the transition metal. If the d orbital is fully filled, we have seen, like in zinc, these metals will not form a colored compound. Rather, their compounds are going to be white and their solutions are going to be colorless. And finally, we looked at some of the places where transition metals are used as catalysts. You have to remember these uses and the processes where these catalysts are used in. We will meet in the next part of this series where we are going to be looking at the final property of a transition metal, which is in the formation of a complex ion. Until then, take care, keep revising, prepare well for your upcoming assessments, and bye.